in our first cup, we're going to talk. There's this terrifying moment where everybody has suddenly become technical, and AI tools can now crank out really convincing apps and workflows and prototypes, and they can do it faster than most companies can schedule a kickoff meeting, which sounds amazing until you realize that we may have removed friction from one part of the product development process that probably actually needs a lot of friction. Because making software cheaper doesn't automatically make ideas smarter. So I want to welcome our panel here this morning. First of all, I've got the godfather of product management training. He is the visionary behind the Quartz Open framework and the master of Get Off My Lawn, Steve Johnson, CEO of Product Growth Leaders. Welcome back, Steve. And next guy, he is part AI product leader and part AI catalog cover model. Say hi to Mark Hamilton, principal product manager at Kojo.
That's hilarious.
Welcome, Mark. And so I got a confession. My wife told me I needed to get a Brazilian, so I got one. Welcome, Thiago Brum, Senior Director of Product Management at ADP.
And for me to quote that, Jason.
Good morning. And last but not least, welcome my good friend and owner of Podium Studios, the guy who makes me look good every week. Liam behind the panel makes me look even better. Welcome, Devin Smith from Podium Studios.
Dude, the intros this week are next level. That's incredible.
I had to clear one of those before I came on the air, so I won't tell you which one. You can figure that one out. All right, so let's get into it here. Okay, I just want to get started, and kind of part of the thing that had me thinking this article when I saw it. Everybody knows I love Ravi Mehta. He's a great thinker. He's got some really great observations, and he's done a lot of great work. And one of the things that he pointed out in this article is very early on is that the reason that we do as product managers, a lot of the things that we do is to reduce the risk associated with making very expensive decisions about software development. We developed MVP. The MVP concept came out of the startup world specifically to do something that you could test to confirm that you were doing something valuable. But now creating more extensive MVPs or prototypes is a whole different game from what it was. And so the cycle's compressing, and that leaves a lot of downstream implications. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the first cup. We're going to talk about it more in the main session as well. But I want to dig in with you first, Steve, and just kind of get your take on this acceleration and compression that Robbie's talking about here.
I think it's great that, no, I don't. Yeah. I'm so concerned as I look at product managers using vibe coding for weeks at a time, trying to perfect the prototype. And I think almost everybody misunderstood lean startup. And even the author, Eric Ries, said MVP is the most misunderstood concept in lean startup. And it wasn't supposed to be a product. It was supposed to be the smallest amount of work you can learn something from. And so I'm all on board with prototyping. I think I've been advocating for it for years. I also think it is something best done by designers than product managers. What I really would like product managers to do is get out of the building and step away a little bit from the technical and get back to what business problems are we trying to solve.
Yeah. Yep. Thiago, you're in the thick of it all the time. I know you think a lot about these topics. What do you see happening to product teams when executives or stakeholders can jump in and prototype something and throw something out and say, hey, I was thinking about this and here's something I want you to look at. How does that impact the work? And do you even see that in your life or among your colleagues and friends?
Yeah. Fortunately, I haven't seen any stakeholders doing that because I would be very worried if they started doing this.
Mhm.
To me, it's almost like, hey, here's my new pet project. And guess what? I vibe coded it. So everything is done. It's ready to go. That's something that should not be happening anywhere because well, I'm really with Steve here. Like, but I'm biased because I learned a lot of stuff from him. So like, it's almost like preaching to the choir. The main thing is like not how fast you can build, but like how meaningful things are. Should you build that in the first place? Is this a viable idea in the first place? Is this solving a real problem? Is this something that is going to make everybody's lives look easier? I always like to use that something that I learned from a mentor back in the day, which is it doesn't matter how awesome your product is. What really matters is how awesome I feel when I'm using your product. And I think that's the main thing. So again, like fortunately, I haven't seen anything around prototyping and vibe coding away from a stakeholder perspective. I see the stakeholders like, okay, we need to validate this. We need to have some hypothesis here, validation, right? And what I the way that I see this happening is really like the team can use the prototype as a conversation starter, just like feature maps for a conversation starter when Jeff Patton first coined it. And right. And that's really what you would use it for.
So
My advice to anybody trying to vibe code away is like, first make sure that you're really solving a problem. And then you can start the conversation with a prototype.
So I know I kind of tricked you into this panel by throwing you an article that started talking about jazz, and you immediately started wanting to play music today, and I kind of kept you from that. But tell me, just based on Robbie kind of made that metaphor around jazz in general, and that being part of the evolution. What do you see the product management role in general evolving to in light of and responsibilities evolving to in just, 15, 20 seconds, kind of what's your quick take?
First, I hope that Ravi is a musician like I am, and he understands that in order for you to play jazz, you really need to know your instrument. You really need to know the techniques. So if you don't know that, don't even try to join a jazz band. Like stay away from jazz as much as possible. So it's really in that sense, like I understand that now everything is compressed and now you can be much more iterative, which is a good thing for agile, but also you need to know the tools and you need to know how to use the tools, right? Otherwise it's just a fancy way of failing again.
A cacophony. Yep.
And can I add to that? In a jazz band, if the sax player doesn't know what he's doing, the drummer doesn't say, hang on, hand me your horn, let me take her.
So good. That's it. Steve, I was thinking of saying the same thing. My dad is a jazz musician. My parents own a jazz club. I've watched a lot of jazz in my life. And when somebody's doing something wrong, the rest of the band doesn't say, hey, let me get your instrument. They try to improvise around it if they can. There may be some looks like, dude on the bass guitar is looking at the drummer like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
but he doesn't go over there and get on the drums.
Yeah. And what I would say, avoid music analogies as much as you can because this is freaking hard. Right? It requires a lot of specialization. So like I know it's easy to relate to it, but also it also makes things look simpler than they actually are. Right. It requires specialization, it requires knowledge, it requires honing your craft to be able to do things like just in music, like it is in product, like in any other discipline.
Yep.
I do still have
I actually-
thing, but
All right, Devin.
no, he's ready to go.
You ready to go?
No, I was just going to say, I think probably one thing I absolutely agree with is the customer. And I'm a big customer discovery advocate. And like you were saying, Steve, like the whole point of MVP, everybody's missed the whole point is to learn from. And me being in a startup and living in the startup world, I do have another perspective. I think it's aligned 100% with, we don't need to build anything that hasn't been validated with customers. But like Ravi's talking about, I have seen a shift personally to where designers are more than ever the owner of the design system than so much individual contributors for creating a prototype in Figma. How this plays out right now for us is our design team is absolutely still creating prototypes and designs, but they own the design system in Claude. So that enables me as a PM in 30 minutes, maybe less, could be 2 hours, to create a workable prototype that me and the designer then can go hop on a call and talk to customers. And it enhances that customer loop because then your time to market for a prototype, going from creating something in Figma where you have your design system codified using Claude Design, you can go and get feedback a lot faster. And it shortens that feedback loop for us, is what I'm seeing on our side.
Is that functionally changing the idea of minimum viable product to minimum believable demo or minimum believable prototype?
And that's funny because I think, like you were saying, Steve, it's like, what's the smallest thing we could build that allows us to learn? And so I'm going to be annoying and say, I mean, you can still take that and be like, okay, now let's turn this based on these product requirements. I still strongly believe in PRDs. Based on these product requirements, turn this into a plan for us. And I think, like you're saying, Jason, it's like, it is maybe we reframe it as something we call different, you hear, but I still see it as part of, like, you've built something. It's just very quickly, and it's a lot of throwaway code because code now is cheap.
Yep, it is. It's dirt cheap. Devin, you have walked the
And
line.
hang on, that's a really strong point that Mark just made, and that is, this was supposed to be thrown away.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's an old programming maxim, which is plan to throw the first version away. You will anyway. As you get
Or
into
regret it later.
version 2, it's like, who wrote this stuff?
Yeah. And Devin, you've walked the line. You've been on both sides of the line between product and design. And so you live the throw the first version away because paper is really cheap. And that's the way, designers have always worked. So, but if this concept of prototyping has become nearly free, does product management as a discipline or as a functional role within the company become more or less important?
Oh man. So in my opinion, and this may be, I don't know, it may sound like a broken record, but I have always believed that the product manager is like a mini CEO over the product or the area of the product for which they're responsible. And so the whole, like, oh, we have product managers being expected to prototype now.
Yeah.
That to me is insanity. So one of the last software companies that I worked on the inside, shortly after I left, we had product managers that, the leadership was expecting the product managers to prototype and because it was a weird situation. So, all the designers quit. There's a reason I was gone. A lot of people quit. Okay. So it was a very weird situation. So I understand that there were some things they had to do in that situation, but that was kind of a thing that I had heard was happening before. And when you can generate a prototype quickly, I think that can work well. If the idea is, this is a sketch, this is an idea that I had, and I can show you better than I can tell you. That can work. I still don't think that can replace a product manager being the one who understands the customer inside and out. I don't think that can replace writing. I agree. I think a PRD, I got ADHD, so the idea of writing a detailed PRD to me is still kryptonite, but I still think there's an importance to writing, to being able to communicate well. And if anything, I think that working with AI, and, I've been doing a decent amount of vibe coding lately. I built our whole new website, with Claude Code, et cetera. The ability to communicate is actually even more important. And so I think that the product manager role becomes purer, in my opinion. It should become purer. I think The last thing I'll say is you've got a couple of things happening here. Like, yeah, you can make a prototype if you've got a design system already. You know, like I said, I've been a designer. I've gone from 0 to 1. When you don't have a design system, the idea of the product manager prototyping something is just it takes them way too long, right? Because there's no Lego blocks for them to play with. And so I don't think it works if you're going from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
If you have a well-established product, you know, worked on Wells Fargo, helped architect the Wells Fargo design system, it's probably not the same as like 10 years ago, but that did allow a lot of people, they had Lego blocks, and a product manager could say, hey, I want this, this, this here, right? And we could argue with them, but they at least they could come to us with something like that. I think that's enabled by a design system, but that's an established product. I think when you're going from 0 to 1, that breaks down. It doesn't work. And I still think the designer's job is a designer's job. And I will say that, to take it back to the jazz thing, sorry, Thiago, but you know, I've seen people play with like, oh, I've got like a couple of musicians, I got some tracks, and I'm playing the tracks in the background. So there's not a guitar guy here. There's not a saxophonist. I got him on a track, right?
Yep.
Then you see the full band play. Who on earth wants to watch the guy or the couple of people play with tracks in the background versus the full band? I can tell you the full band is always going to smoke the guy with tracks every time.
I got one more person I want to, thank you, Devin. I got one more person I want to introduce who was able to join us today, and we got her to lollygag back over here to the panel. Welcome back our good friend, Kelly Jones. She is a product management for finance at Elite and a longtime member of the product cop community. Hey, Kelly, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Sorry I'm late in true fashion. Fire drill, last minute.
Lollygagging takes time.
I wish AI could help me with the fire drills.
Just real quick, and I want to welcome everyone in our audience. I'm going to ask Kelly a question here, but I want to welcome everybody in the audience. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If AI makes, and you can answer this question or anything else, but if AI makes software dramatically easier to build, what becomes the hardest part of product management? Is it strategy? Is it customer insight? Is it prioritization? Or is it still just the saying no to bad ideas? What are you seeing? What are you feeling in your life? And what I'd love to have is some folks to raise your hand, and I'd love you to introduce yourself. Even if you don't have an answer to that question, we'd love to have you introduce yourself and tell us what has your attention right now in your product management role or in your life related to your career. What are the things that are on your mind and that you're really focused on these days? Would love to hear from you. So Kelly, back to you. What is becoming the hardest part of product management in this world that we're evolving into? The company you're with is really focused on AI for finance and legal firms. Tell me about what you're seeing.
So there's two things. There's the value we're delivering to our customers and reimagining how we can solve problems in ways that we could never solve them before. That's not the hard part for me. It's leveraging it in my day job and figuring out how to do that. I think some of the gray lines of roles and responsibilities is coming into play, especially with the design team, right? I'm in financials and I do not want to watch myself on screen. I'm trying to figure out how to turn that part off.
You can't. You can't.
I can.
Yeah, it's a product of you're in the production, so you see the production and your video feed. Sorry.
Awesome. So it is trying to figure out the lines of responsibilities between us and the product design team is something that's challenging, right? If I think about me, and financials can be a difficult domain, especially when thinking about some of the problems that we're solving. And sometimes it's easier for me to just sketch it in Claude rather than spending round and round going with the designer. It's just easier for me to sketch something out and use that as a starting point for the conversation. And then eventually, obviously, get the customer involved in that. So roles and responsibilities is becoming interesting in a gray area that we haven't figured out quite yet. And the other piece where I spend more of my job, which AI has not had an impact quite yet, is the commercialization aspects of the job, right? The go-to-market pieces. How are we going to monetize this? What is this opportunity we can go after? A versus B. It's not the design that I'm all that concerned about, although I'm obviously concerned about usability. It's the monetization and the commercialization of that. And what does it mean to us from a business outcome perspective and not just the user outcome. Cool. That is probably top of mind for me.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
You too.
April, welcome back to Product Coffee. Why don't you introduce yourself to those who don't know you and tell us what got your attention this morning?
Okay, hello. Good morning. My name's April Dodd. I'm a senior product. I'm formerly with Clarivate as senior director of product, B2B SaaS and B2C. So what I'm seeing, and I really appreciate Kelly's I agree with everything that Kelly just said. I just like to add, for me, the biggest challenge I'm seeing is the context coordination, context management. So as we're using these AI tools, having a single source of context that is orchestrated across development, engineering, product. And so the product manager, I think, is shifting from being an orchestrator of people and process to being an orchestrator of context. And it's not a problem that has been solved by any single solution application. There's nowhere to put all your context. There's nowhere to keep track of all of it. So I think there's a solution space there that is missing. And I think it's making it difficult to kind of make sure that you're covering all your prototypes and you have the right documents and everything prepared. And until that's kind of settled, it's kind of hard to know how to keep everyone aligned on what it is you're actually building.
Excellent. I saw that you had quite a bit of chatter going there in the main chat as well. Thanks. I can't wait to be able to go back and read and catch up on all that. If you're out there watching us on YouTube, our internal chat here in the virtual studio, virtual meetup room is on fire this morning. You're missing out on a lot. Make sure that you get on our mailing list so that you can find out how to join us here on Zoom every week when we do this. Brian, welcome back. How are you, my friend? What's got your introduce yourself to those who don't know you and tell us what has your attention. There you are. You disappeared.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, there we got you.
Okay, perfect. Glad to be here. I am Brian Utes. I'm the Senior Director of Product at a company called Amax Health. And I think the question on if we're able to do things faster and able to ship things quicker and cheaper, where does product management find the value? Where does it become more valuable? I think we've moved bottleneck from the manufacturing plant to both tails, right? We've moved it to the discovery side. So if we're able to do 10,000 things in the time it took us to do 10 things a month ago, how do we make sure that they have enough raw material to continue to be productive and they're not sitting around waiting? And then I think the other piece is, okay, so if we're able to get all of this stuff out, how do we communicate to our market, right? How do we communicate to the actual users of our product in a way that they can consume and leverage the things that we're putting out there? I think the challenge now is not so much a build, but it's a discovery and an adoption problem. And those are two things that I think product management should be very, very good at. And we should become more and more valuable to our organizations. But the focus has to shift from just, even in some regard, the prioritization piece. All we're prioritizing is what are we not going to do so that we can make the biggest impact, right? And so that hasn't changed a ton to me. It's just, how do we communicate to the market? How do we drive adoption? And then how are we building kind of that mining and discovery area so that we have enough to continue to feed our teams as we move through that process? So I think those are kind of my focuses right now of how to build those processes better.
Yeah, that adoption focus is I think it's a huge gap in general that too many product managers don't pay enough attention to, and too many product management organizations don't pay enough attention to. I think you really nailed it with that one, especially. We get so focused on shipping and getting the idea right and getting the product out the door. And by the time we get it out the door, there's often a backlog of the next things you've got to do. And there's very little capacity left to focus on actually realizing the return on the investment. That's not marketing's job and sales jobs. It's product's job to make sure that we've got the things in place to drive that once the product does go out the door, and that we're paying attention to what's actually happening so that we can figure out why it is or isn't being adopted. So that's a great call out. Steve, you got your hand up? Jump on back in, buddy.
Oh, I want to agree with Brian here. And yet I find myself, I don't know, 20 years ago, as we started adopting Agile, I found exactly that situation that as we became more agile and more productive, uh, the bottleneck was on the outsides. It was okay, like the number one or two difficulty in Agile was product management hadn't filled the backlog. And then in my case, we had gone from the PRD approach, which I thought was all gone. But anyway, we had been working 18 months on achieving a largely unachievable PRD. And I took us down to shipping every quarter. Whatever's done, we're shipping. And that's when sales and marketing said, this is coming at us too fast. So the old songs are good and the new songs are good, right? It's the same story, the same song again. And it's even faster now to build, which makes it all the more critical for product managers to own the front end of discovery, and for product managers or product marketing, which I'm increasingly involving in my teams, to own the go-to-market side as soon as possible, because things can move faster, but only as fast as the rest of the organization can keep up.
Yeah, that's a great point, Steve. Thank you. I think we got time for one more real quick before we switch into our main session, but we're going to come back around to this probably quite a bit as well. So Nilesh, why don't you introduce yourself, say hi, and tell us what's got your attention?
Thanks, Allison. Very excited to be here. This is a great conversation. I'm the co-founder of Prodi AI. We built a product exactly in this space, so I might reach out to a few of you to get some thoughts and feedback. But I feel like the most difficult part of my job as in the product space is actually making the right decisions, taking the time to make the right decision. Because I feel like everything that I was being blocked by before AI it's been resolved, right? It can surface all the data points for me fairly easily. It can give me the technical information, which I probably didn't have in the past sometimes. It can prototype for me. But what I need to do is make the right decision upstream, because I know that if I make a right decision right now, it's going to affect what happens with my AI downstream, right? All the development and everything else. And if I make a wrong decision, it's going to show up in every single piece of work, be it PRDs, product specifications, my prototypes. So yeah, like I need to take a moment, slow down maybe. Like the speed is great. I already have it. But like if it's 30 seconds versus 30 minutes, does not really make a difference. That decision making is kind of really important now. It's more important than ever.
This week, we've got a collection of unresolved arguments. The product management job market feels really strange. AI is making some teams dramatically faster while other teams are just generating prettier confusion. Everybody claims to have a modern product process now, but most companies still look like they're duct taping new tools onto old bad habits and hoping nobody notices. So instead of pretending there's a clean narrative here, we're opening it up. We've got a bunch of people who are hiring product managers, building AI products, leading enterprise teams, training product organizations, and trying to survive the same shifts everybody else in this room is dealing with. So our roundtable panel is here because I know we can count on these folks to have some great takes, but I really want to hear from everybody in the audience too. If you've got something to say, raise your virtual hand and jump in. And if you've got a question about anything that's on your mind that you want to direct at our panel, throw that hand in the air like you don't care too. So I want to start. In our first cup, we were talking about the evolution and some of the changes and the pressures and the stresses that are on the product management profession, the product development lifecycle. And I want to wrap that up. Allison, the other Allison, had her hand up there at the minute. I want to bring her up to kind of round out that conversation. So Allison, introduce yourself to everybody who you're with, what had your attention there a few minutes ago.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Allison Callander. I'm a director of product at the Home Depot and was in charge of the product strategy and operations team, where I led our product center of excellence. And so was very instrumental in trying to adapt our finance strategy for software development from a very waterfall type of approach to a product type approach. This included adding metrics, trying to align people to standard ways of working for transparency and predictability, so that regardless of what product our users were engaging with, they had the same experience in finance. And so some of these things that you're talking about, right, where you're trying to install a product organization, how does that look? How do you make it happen? Were challenges that I was definitely working on. One of the things that really kind of sparked my interest, we were talking a little bit about adoption, challenges in adoption, is we're trying to be more agile and we're trying to push more change out and really try to be very responsive to our customers' needs and our customers' problems. I was finding that change weariness was really becoming a problem with our users. Like our users are delighted that we're just sending changes out all the time and being as responsive as we can to their requirements and their problems to solve. That's great. We can continue saying, look at all the value we're bringing. We're bringing all this change. We're making change faster. We're finding ways to be more efficient. We're using tools that help us to get change out the door as quickly as humanly possible. But for some of our users, it was very much like drinking from a fire hose. So we're finding that there were some products that weren't as mature as other products. And how do we balance across the product mix and across the capability mix to ensure that our users aren't completely overwhelmed and that as we're prioritizing change, our users can absorb it. And so I was really interested in some of the change management comments that were shared earlier.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. That is a big part of this. We can ship so many things so much faster, or at least seemingly. And that's been a growing problem, as Steve mentioned a moment ago, since the proliferation of agile and the whole concept of iterate, iterate, iterate. And then we got into CI/CD pipelines where we can literally deploy, and some companies brag about deploying new features, new capabilities multiple times a day. It
Yes.
can be overwhelming. And how are you how I'd love to turn this on the panel. How are you managing that level? Steve, you talked about it a moment ago. How do you recommend people manage the trade-off between the ability to ship lots of things very quickly and managing your customer's ability to consume it?